Praise Jesus. I promised to come back and teach about witchcraft in general, in full. Yesterday, I gave a brief background on the different signs that show that you actually bewitched. The Bible says, "My people have perished because of lack of knowledge." That's in Hosea 4:6. We have perished because we lack knowledge on different things. Most of us do not even know that we have witchcraft activities like that are influencing our will, that are influencing our destinies. So we suffer in silence, not knowing that we could actually do something about this, or we think that the altars that were raised against us cannot even be erased. So today we are going to speak about witchcraft, how it happens, where does it stem from. First and foremost, when we read in Ephesians 6:12, we understand that whatever we go through, because we are spiritual beings who are just in a body, whatever we go through is not literally carnal, it's not literally physical, it is spiritual. And Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand." So we realize that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. We do not wrestle against our fellow human beings. We do not wrestle against carnality. But because we are spiritual beings, everything that attacks us begins in the spirit. So we literally wrestle against we literally wrestle against principalities. And what are principalities? Principalities are rulers of places. They are princes that have taken over dimensions. Like you see in Daniel 10, there is the king of Persia, the king of Greece. So those had taken over dimensions. A principality is a power that takes over a dimension, a full dimension, not simply a community, but a full dimension. And then Ephesians 6 still says we wrestle against spiritual wickedness, we wrestle against powers, and we wrestle against rulers of darkness of this age. So where does witchcraft come into this? Witchcraft comes into spiritual wickedness. Why is witchcraft spiritual wickedness? Witchcraft is spiritual wickedness because there is a reverse of your will. Wickedly someone or an altar or a diabolical spirit reverses your will. The spirit is wicked to you, so it will reverse your will so that its will, or the will of the sender, will be subjected onto your life. So witchcraft falls under spiritual wickedness. Under spiritual wickedness, we have things like sorcery, we have things like divination, we have things like familiar spirits, we have things like necromancy. What is necromancy? Necromancy is a situation where people communicate with the dead. So that is necromancy. So witchcraft also falls under spiritual wickedness. But witchcraft, in general, what is witchcraft and what do we understand by witchcraft? Witchcraft is a practice of black magic for a purpose of hiring an evil spirit. So someone sets up an altar to hire an evil spirit. And this evil spirit has been hired to oppress you, to torment you, or to subdue your will, so that the will of the person who has hired this spirit can take over. So every time someone practices witchcraft upon you, over you, they want their will They want their will to be done in your life. Because as a person, there is God's will, there is your will, but someone will practice witchcraft so that God's will does not manifest in your life, and so that your personal will does not manifest in your life, and their will shall take over. Everyone in life has a desire and a personal will, but once you are bewitched, your will shall be taken away from you, and you will realize things are going the way you do not want them to happen. You want something to happen in a particular way, but it ends up happening in a different way because your will was taken over. The hired evil spirit, diabolic spirit, will impose its will on you. When someone practices witchcraft, there is a diabolic spirit they will summon, depending on exactly the kind of will they want to impose on your life. For example, if you've been a successful person and someone wants to change that, they will summon a spirit of poverty upon your life. They will set up an altar and summon a spirit of poverty upon your life. So the will of financial crisis shall happen or shall take over your life. So poverty shall subdue you. That is just an example. So there are so many spirits that can be summoned: spirits to sabotage marriages, spirits to bring premature death, spirits to bring illnesses. So all these spirits can be summoned because the spirit that has been hired will impose its will and its characteristics on your life or on you. So you need to realize and understand that you have been bewitched. You cannot fight an enemy you do not know. The Bible says an enemy revealed is an enemy defeated. That's why yesterday I took it upon myself to teach you the signs that show that you are bewitched. Because if you're not sure you are bewitched, then there's no way you're going to fight witchcraft. So, and you also need to understand that if you're bewitched, you cannot fight evil, you cannot fight witches, you cannot fight evil altars with carnality. You cannot fight evil altars with carnality. It is a spiritual battle, because witchcraft shall attack your spirit. It is a spiritual battle, and because it's a spiritual battle, you cannot use carnal weapons. That's why I gave examples yesterday. Someone could be sick and they're going to hospitals, and the doctors are telling them they do not actually know, or they cannot actually find the disease, and they end up giving you painkillers, or they end up giving you antibiotics and all these sorts of things, but you continue to suffer in pain. Why? Because you cannot cure bewitchment by carnality. You cannot cure bewitchment by carnal weapons. You go into hospital shall not cure a disease that was imposed on you through witchcraft. That is the reason why you need to know, have I been bewitched? What has happened? What kind of spirit has been imposed upon me or upon my life? That is the only way you can win witchcraft. So the Bible, we have an example in the Bible. In the Bible, in Mark 4:36, let's read Mark 4:36. I want us to see that we have enough spiritual backing, enough biblical backing for this, and I am not simply getting these things out of my head. So Mark 4:36. In Mark 4:36, the Bible says, on the same day when evening had come, he said to them, let us cross over to the other side. Now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and other little boats were also with him. And a great storm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a pillow, and they awoke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? Teacher, Do you not care that we are perishing? Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, Who can this be that even the wind and sea obey him? So we are here. In this verse, we learn to understand that there are certain things that can happen against our will, and we can only win them through rebuking. We cannot win using carnal weapons. So when witchcraft has been set over you, now we give an example of the disciples with Jesus in the boat, and then the water was filling up. When the water was filling up, this was not, they were using carnal weapons. They got water jars and started getting the water out, out of the boats. But the wind needed to be rebuked. It did not need carnal weapons. It did not need jars and bowels and canoes and all these things to drain out the water. No, the wind needed to be rebuked so that the flooding can stop. So you need to understand that when you're fighting witchcraft, you don't use carnal weapons. You are going to use spiritual weapons. Remember, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. So since we are fighting against spiritual wickedness, you cannot use carnal weapons. You cannot use things of the world to fight spiritual wickedness. You need to rebuke, you need to prophesy, you need to raise an altar, you need to sacrifice. There's so many things that you need to do in order to rebuke witchcraft. So the first thing that shows that carnality was not allowed in this presence is they tried to get out the water using jars, but it did not help until Jesus rebuked the wind. So we understand also this verse shows us something, that anything in life has ears. The wind can be summoned and the wind can be rebuked. So if wind can be summoned and rebuked, you think illness cannot be summoned and rebuked? You think failure cannot be summoned and rebuked? If someone uses an altar to summon failure, then you will have to use an altar to rebuke failure. So everything has spiritual ears, and it can be summoned and it can be rebuked. Also, we see in the book of Job 38. I'm not going to indulge in so many of these verses, but I'm going to mention them, and you can read them at your time too. This will help us to have shorter videos. In Job 38, 19 to 24, in the book of Job, we see that light and darkness have a dwelling, and you can literally summon them. So if you can summon light and darkness, why can't someone summon death upon you? Why can't someone summon illness upon you? And if they can be rebuked, so why can't you rebuke them? You see, all it takes is knowledge. But most of these things are affecting our lives because we lack knowledge. And the Bible says, ye are gods. You've been given the power to create. If you've been given the power to create, it means someone can create. If you're not creating, something will create in your space. If you're not planting, something shall be planted, whether you want it or not. So with witchcraft, the attack is usually spiritual, and it shall manifest in the physical if you do nothing about it. Remember, life is spiritual. Whatever happens to us in the spiritual realm is what rules over carnality, is what rules over our physical bodies, because we are spiritual beings. So you need to command your life. that even if witchcraft has been subjected upon you, you can literally command your life. You can literally rebuke, but you cannot rebuke something that you do not know. You need to speak to a situation. I'll give you another example in the Bible that we are not going to indulge in. In Ezekiel 37:4-7, we see Prophet Jeremiah being ordered by the Lord to prophesy to the dry bones. So if bones can be spoken to and life comes back into them, it means you can speak, you can prophesy unto any situation in your life and it shall be moved. But this is a spiritual weapon. It's not a carnal weapon. You also need to understand that spiritual knowledge is you knowing that you're not dealing with a witch, you're not dealing with a person who bewitched you. By revelation, God could show you that this person is actually doing this and this. But spiritual wisdom is you knowing that you're not going to battle the witch, but you're going to battle the witchcraft. You're going to battle the spirit behind the witch. Remember, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, because if someone has already done witchcraft against you, even if you kill them in the physical, that the spirit that they summoned that is ruling in your life shall not go away. So that is why it's important that you fight the spirit, the witchcraft, not the witch. So you need to be so discerned not to put anger in this situation. Some of you are fighting your mothers-in-law. You're like, my mother-in-law is doing this and this and this. No, it is not your mother-in-law. It is the spirit behind the mother-in-law. If you rebuke that spirit and the spirit goes away, you will get a very beautiful mother-in-law. So you need to understand, as you fight spiritual wickedness, as you fight witchcraft, to not be overtaken by anger. Deal with the spirit behind, rebuke the spirit, prophesy. Another thing we need to know about witchcraft in general is generational. You realize that things that affected our parents could still be affecting you as a person. So it does not matter. Once an altar has been set, it does not matter if the person who set the altar passed away or they're still alive. You need to break the altar. You literally need to break that altar. If the altar is not broken, it will go on from one generation to another, from one generation unto another. So just because you do not believe that witchcraft happens, just because you don't believe in something, it doesn't make you immune in it. Being in denial that witchcraft doesn't happen will not take witchcraft away. Your ignorance will simply lead you to death. So you need to understand all these situations. And you also need to understand that with witchcraft, there must be an altar. There are so many altars that we have opened in our lives that allow witchcraft to manifest in our lives. Witchcraft can be done through a shrine. A shrine is an altar. Remember, we said altars can be houses, altars can be humans, or altars can be buildings, altars can be anything. They can be trees. So a shrine is an altar. Someone needs to set up an altar so that witchcraft is able to manifest in your life. Because remember, we said that in the physical realm, spirits cannot come and land in the physical realm unless there is an altar. An altar acts as a spiritual airport where spirits land, where divinity meets humanity. So we know that for spirits to be allowed into like on earth, there needs to be an altar that has been summoned or that has been set up and is acting as an effort for the spirits to manifest. So shrines can act as altars. Sexual intercourse can act as altars. When you have sex with someone, you've opened an altar. There's a portal that has been created. So sexual intercourse becomes an altar for witchcraft. Also, you will understand that there are different altars that we hardly know about. Altars are things, could be things we do, or an access that we give to the spirits to manipulate us. Like we mentioned in the previous video, a sex is an altar. Every time you engage in sex, know that every spirit that affects the other person will affect you as well, because you've opened an altar and you have given the spirits a portal to manifest in your life. So sexual intercourse, whether it is happening in the spiritual, for people who have spiritual wives and spiritual husbands, or it has happened in the physical where you personally make a decision to engage, that has given access to the spirits to manipulate you. The other thing is food. Most of us like to eat. You need to understand that people use food as an altar. Food acts as a portal for witchcraft. Someone can enchant the food. Someone can put things into food. Food, the Bible talks about food in a way in a way of agreement. The Bible says, can two walk together except they agree? Can two sit together except they agree? So for you to actually sit with someone and have a meal with them, you're in agreement with them. You're covenanting with them. That's why dreams about eating in the spiritual, you're having dreams when you're eating all these sorts of meals, you're eating all these sorts of foods, are usually covenanting spirits, are usually incantations, are usually all these sorts of altars that have been raised, and you're covenanting with them. So you need to be careful from where you eat food. You need to be careful who gives you food. I love food myself, but if you cannot afford to buy something for yourself, don't eat it. Or if you've been given food, master the art of praying and rebuking before you eat the food. That's if you cannot get away from it. You know, you could visit a person and you've given a million excuses not to eat with them, and then someday you're just trapped. You just end up eating. So pray for the food. Learn to pray for the food. Food can be an altar. Sexual intercourse is an altar. Shrines are altars. Houses we go to renting are altars. People have already made altars when they are constructing these houses. And when you go and stay in a house and you've not anointed it or prayed for it, the altar that is served in that place, or the altar that was raised in the place, shall still affect your life. Our families and bloodline, people sacrifice so many things. People set up different altars for success, altars for all sorts of things. Whether you know about an altar or not, that altar shall still manifest and function in your life. I talked about altars already, and I need you to know that witchcraft cannot manifest. Spirits to attack you through bewitchment cannot manifest without altars. So you need to rebuke and close the portals of these altars. The Bible speaks in Galatians 3. Let's read Galatians 3. The Bible says, "O foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you that you should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ has clearly portrayed among you as crucified? This only I want to learn from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith? Are you so foolish, having begun in the Spirit? Are you now being made perfect by the flesh?" So you need to understand, as a Christian or anyone watching this video, the Bible calls everyone who has been bewitched foolish. Why are you foolish after you've been bewitched? It's because your will has been taken away from you. And whoever is in control, whoever has bewitched you, is in charge of your will and your destiny. That's why you become a foolish Galatian. You stop even believing the things that you've seen. You've seen Jesus Christ die. You've seen that life is spiritual. But because your will has been taken away from you, you're being subjected to do things that you didn't even want to do. Your life is being subjected to manifest in a way that you didn't even want it to manifest. So you need to fight. This is a spiritual battle. It's not a battle about lost friendship. It's not about a battle about wrong relatives, bad relatives. It's not a battle about that. You need to fight the spirit that has been summoned in your life to control you. So how do we close? I'll give first, before I close, I'll give you another example that shows that sorcery actually exists, or witchcraft literally exists. In Acts 13:6, there was a sorcerer that was called Bar Jesus. That sorcerer had taken over the whole community. He was practicing witchcraft, and he had set God's people against each other. We've seen this. You could enter into a community and there's all sorts of things happening in a community because a principality or witchcraft and a spirit has taken over, a spirit of alcoholism, spirit of pregnancies, early pregnancies, spirits of death, spirits of prostitution. So you need, Acts 13 shows us that Bar Jesus was a sorcerer, and he was only one through rebuke. Paul had to rebuke him with blindness. If he hadn't gone blind, witchcraft could have remained happening. Also, Psalms in 1 Samuel 28:9, we see another form of witchcraft that happened. I've spoken about, with witchcraft, people even summon the dead. In 1 Samuel 28:9, Saul visited a witch, and Saul wanted to speak to Prophet Samuel about his life's fate, because remember, the Lord had rebuked him, and the Lord had sanctified David to be the next king. So Saul was not satisfied with that. He kept thinking there's something else that could be done. And remember, Samuel had passed on. So Saul wanted to speak to Samuel. So he visited a witch, and they summoned the spirit of Samuel. And then Samuel appeared. So if a whole prophet can be summoned in death, who are you not to be summoned? Like I told you, spirits, who are you not to be summoned? You have a spirit. The moment you have a spirit, you can be summoned either through a shrine or through any altar. So Samuel's spirit was summoned, and Samuel was awakened, and he was so angry, and he was like, who has awakened me in my spirit, in my sleep? Of course, it didn't end well with Saul. Samuel rebuked him, and it led to death and all these other things. I will not go into that. I've given you the verse to go and read. But it shows you that witchcraft is real, and souls can be summoned, and your destiny can be altered, and your will changed. So you need to stay alert. You need to be knowledgeable. You need to look at something and you're like, okay, what is happening in my life? Is this witchcraft, or this is the will of God, or is this just a natural cause? Or you need to look at things spiritually rather than carnality. So how are we going to reverse? How do we break witchcraft? We shall break witchcraft through prayer, through fasting, through raising altars to rebuke the evil altars that have been raised, through silencing bloodline curses, sacrificing with intention. Be intentional when you're making sacrifices, because the people that have bewitched you have sacrificed on altars. They have done so many things on those altars. So you need to sacrifice as a child of God. Be intentional. Tell God, this sacrifice I've brought on your altar is to break me from probably joblessness, to break me from this illness. Be intentional. You will win.